Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back for another Bible story time. But we're going to hit pause today and finally discuss Project Hail Mary. Now, this is very late for my talk, and why? Because I have been struggling to organize so much information, like so much to unpack. So I like to normally say I'm going to try to be brief, but it's no way I can be brief about this. So let's just jump into it. I've put a little talk from the main star who plays Grace, the science teacher who is recruited for this mission. And there's plenty of trailers that you can go see because I tried to give you guys the backstory, but it's a 2.5-hour movie. There's no way I could give you the backstory and keep this to under a half hour, which is what I like to do. So let's just jump into it. So the opening scene is Grace, a former science teacher, and he's floating in space. And basically we get these flashbacks of how we arrived at this moment. And we see all of the things that led to this moment in time. And it's a pretty standard, save the world movie, but it's not standard in any way imaginable. There's so many layers here. There's nothing standard about this movie. And, and it's so funny. I really get into some of these What's Life About movies because they do have a message and they do make us better people in the end, right? So I just want to say kudos to this director and this miraculous and beautiful story that he has brought us for such a time as this, right? For such a time as this when we really need each other to survive, right? So one of my main points is, then let's just start. So Mr. Grace is a science teacher. Like all of us teachers, we know the real world is happening behind us, and we're kind of censoring what we're saying and deflecting all these questions from the children. And the children are like, is it true we're going to be dead in 30 years? Is it true that this is happening? And like any good teacher, the bell rings and we just thank God, because I couldn't really get into it. Like, I have restrictions on how much I can speak about what's going on in the world. And of course, you don't want the notorious parents calling about, why did you tell my child the world was ending, right? So that type of scenario. But some classic save the world moves. The black SUV rolls up and out of it pops up, I think her name is, I wrote it down, Eva Stride. Right? She pops up and she's like, Mr. Grace, we have some questions. We'd like to have a word with you. The government always wants to have a word with you right before they snatch you up, right? So she wants to have a word. She hears about his failed research project. He's a former molecular biologist. Let me get my tongue twisting moments out. Molecular biologist. And she's interested in his research. He's done some crazy things, and that's what got him booted from the science community and in the classroom, where, it's easy to be accepted. That's just a joke. That's just a joke. Teachers are out here saving the world, and I think that was the point of this movie. But anyway, back to the story. So they go back, and he kind of identifies what this thing is, and they want him to identify. And it's filled with humor, like, am I going to die? Do you guys even care if I'm going to die? So the humor is light, but just so essential to the movie of keeping you engaged. So I love that. I love that there was like a smidget of humor all throughout the movie. It was, like I said, just enough to keep you engaged, but the message was not so. So anyway, he kind of plays with this astrophage and he discovers that it's some sort of cellular creature. It's sucking energy out from the sun, and it's using that energy to go over this Petrova line that's taking it to Venus. The problem is that this Petrova line is spreading and it's infecting all the planets. So the fate of the universe is pretty much at risk. As these suns die, then all of existence will cease to exist because suns are keeping us alive. Apparently, we're warm creatures. We need the heat, right? So he pretty much goes throughout his day. He's feeling real good about himself. Only to discover is, you haven't told us anything fantastic. We have people all over the world who are doing this. If you can't produce, then, go back to your life. But through a series of events and struggles, he stays. But one thing I love about this movie is just off the top, it just hits home. this Eva Stratt. She's this, you know, seems like she doesn't have a lot of compassion or emotion, and she's very focused on the task. Her task is to put a team together to save the world. There is no games. There is no time for games or feelings. And it just showed the perils of leadership. And I always joke, I don't want to be a principal, but you know what? It's the perils of leadership. It's like they have to be these people who are compassionate, but also keep the mission in front of them at all times. And I thought her character was so superbly done. Like, she is running parallel with Destiny. She's thinking of how she can solve this problem with the least amount of casualties. All of these things are playing in the back of her mind, and she's from another country, so she makes little references to what you Americans say is a long shot. You know, who wants to die on a long shot? Like, you tell me I got a 50-50 chance, you know, I'm going to get my boots on, and it's to save the planet, worthy cause. So it's that type of humor that really makes this movie, like, gives it an element of humanity. So the story is very good. So this woman is just, she has to stay level-headed and even keeled, but there's life happening all around her. She knows my word is, that's my little brain clicking there. She knows what's at jeopardy here. She knows what we stand to lose, and that's humanity. So as everyone is kind of enthralled with this research, we realize the real mission is to go to this one planet that is seemingly not being infected by this sun killer. I'm sorry, I'm not going to answer these calls. This sun killer, right? It's the one planet whose sun is thriving, so we have to get there. Here's the issue. It's 11 years away, and we currently had no type of fuel that could take an aircraft that far. So this asteroid, and let me say this right, I'm going to say this right, astrophage, because it's sucking up so much power from the sun, it has the ability to create a petrol or a fuel that will get them there. But this is an Armageddon movie, so you know it's a one-way trip. Whoever volunteers to go, that's it. So they put together this delightful team, this team who the best minds around the country, and it's amazing. And as they get to the point, you know, it's like any chemical. The chemical's very delicate. If it's mishandled, then poof. And so you have it. But before going back to the perils of leadership, the night before they leave the planet for this one-way trip, where that will certainly lead to their death and starvation, they're kind of having this party night, this goodbye party, and it's very touching. And Grace, played by Gosling, he's like, why are they so excited? They're gonna die. You know, he's not very brave. He's just a teacher. Not that we're just teachers, right? And that point I'll continue on later. But he's looking at them. He's like, why are they all buddy-buddy? Why are they so happy? They're gonna die. So he goes out to this evil lady. He's like, do you understand why they have these interactions? Why they're behaving this way? And I thought to myself, you know, these are the moments that we edge each other on. It's the love that compels us, you know. And she's trying to tell him, you know, this is good for morality, but she's very, very like straight-faced. Like, this is what they have to do. This is what they do. This is what they tell themselves. This is the things they tell themselves to survive. And he's not quite pleased, but he understands, and he goes back into the room, and he's sitting there solacely because he's like, these people are going to be dead. Why are they so happy? At least that's my takeaway. We're going to have a live discussion about this because I can't handle this by myself. So we'll do that probably Thursday or Friday, and I'll let everybody know. I'll post it. But, you know, but then she comes in, and the compassionate and the very tender side of leadership, when you have to give your team members something that they can grasp on so that they can taste the victory at the end of this. And she begins to sing to him. And in that song is all of humanity. It's all of humanity. It's like telling them, I don't want to die. I don't want to send people to die. I don't want to know that there's no future. And in that song is everything. It lets you know that, you know, yes, this lady is hardcore. She's cold. She's all the things you would think she needs to be to run a save the world mission, right? You can't be a wuss and run and save the world. But in that tenderness, that was my first time I cried. That was the first time I cried. And you could tell that there was a love there. Like she really loved this guy. And when I say loved him, like loved the humanity of who he was. Not so much a romantic. There might have been some hints of romance there, but more so like she had such a deep respect for his fragility, right? For how fragile he was. He was this molecular biologist, but he was so fragile at the same time. And she knew she was asking too much of him. She knew this. And at this point, he's not even going. She's just trying to give him some comfort of why these people are giving up their life. So that spoke to me about the perils of leadership. And as we consider like leading people, what it actually means, right? What it actually means to be a good leader. So that was just the beginning of the movie. So lo and behold, they're playing around with this stuff. They're gearing up. You got these like, this 12 disciples, so to speak, and they're going to go out there and save the world. And in the morning, they're so excited because they're experiments to see if this thing could fuel this machine. And of course, I'm not telling the movie exactly. You're going to have to go see it yourself if you want the exacts. And it blows up. So the world's greatest scientists die. And they're devastated. This mission's not going to happen. We're going to die. And what she says is, to Grace, his name is Grace, is, it's you, dude. He's like, who are we going to get to do this? And she's like, it's you. And it spoke to me because sometimes you're the last person to know that you are the person for the job. You're the last person who understands the gift that you are. It never occurs to you. You're so wrapped in fear and circumstance that you don't even understand what you bring to the world. And I see my students like this every day. I see them as they don't really understand the gift that they are. They don't really understand the changes that they can go out there and make. They don't get it yet. They don't understand their greatness. And Gosling really didn't understand. I'm going behind his actual name, and I just want to make sure I'm getting his name right. Hold on a second. I'm not going to re-record this, but I'm going to look to make sure I'm saying his name right. Yeah, Gosling. He doesn't really understand that he's this person, and then he also is holding on to life with both hands. He doesn't want to die under any circumstances. He doesn't, to him that it's not worth his life, or he's just, the fear of dying is the obstacle. He cannot do it. He can't do it. So this is where I began to think, this is like Jonah and the whale, like you don't want to go to Nineveh, but you're going to Nineveh. Okay, bro, you're going. So they ask him to think about it for a couple hours, and like, you got 3 hours to make up your mind. But the think about it time is really a courtesy they're extending to him, because you're going, dude. And that part is kind of comical too, because he actually attempts to run, and they stick him in the neck, and they're doing a good movie. And he wakes up on this ship, and hence is where the movie begins. So he's on the ship, and he wakes up. He's got 2 good scientists with him because it was all that's left with the crew. But when he wakes up, he discovers that even the 2 scientists that were with him are dead, and it's all on him. So I kind of felt like he was just going to survive. Like he's like, well, it's over. They're dead. Where am I? And he doesn't quite remember what happened because he had so his memory's kind of fuzzy. He doesn't really understand. But he comes back to him piece by piece as he's exploring this ship, and he realizes the scientists are dead. He doesn't know how they died, but he gets it. He's by himself. So of course you go through that like moments where he's alone. It feels like Castaway. He's on this island, and he's just trying to survive. And he begins to like look out the window, and he sees the sun. He's like, okay, so how far am I from Earth? But then he does these calculations, and guess what, guys? It's not his sun. It's not his sun. It's not the Earth's sun. It's a sun in a whole nother galaxy. He's like, holy shit. Like, sorry for the curse, but holy shit. This is not my son. This is not my son. Like, that blew me away, bro. It's not your son. You far from home. So lo and behold, he's tinkering, and nothing's really happening. You're kind of like floating in space. There's no climax. There's just like you get to sit with this for a few minutes. That we gonna die, because that's gonna be the theme a few times in this movie, and another ship appears. The magic always happens in any good Star Trek or Star Wars when the other ship appears. Like that's when I get excited, when the other ship appears. So the other ship appears, and it's almost like this crystal city, or it's like a harp, it's wood, it's all kinds of things. It's technology that we can't even imagine. It's things that we can't imagine. And so they do this like back and forth communication type, like hello, that introduction, and they form this bridge. And the bridge comes together, and you have this alien rock looking thing that doesn't have a mouth, doesn't have a face. He's just like a rock thing. Looks like a rock spider. Some people called him, if not a spider, it looked like a spider to me. Charlotte's Web all the way. What else? A crab. Some people called him a crab. You'll see the movie. And they build this bridge between two worlds, essentially, because this is his world and this is my world, and this bridge forms, and they come across. But neither one of them can survive the elements. He can't survive on his ship. He doesn't breathe oxygen, right? He doesn't breathe air. He can't survive on his ship. He doesn't breathe whatever substance they're breathing. I won't pretend to know. And now I'm writing and I'm thinking, what's happening? And of course it goes through that whole funny 5 minutes of mirroring each other. It's like, I'm very much gonna date myself here, and it becomes like Caps for Sale. He realizes that he's the guy throwing the hats, and that's why the monkey's throwing the hats. If you don't know Caps for Sale, you're too young. Sorry, can't help you with that analogy. But he realizes that he's just kind of collecting some empirical data, when I make an observation and see what this person is doing. So they begin to formulate this relationship. They have no words. They don't speak the same language. I wrote down, how do we develop a relationship when we can't breathe the same air? How do you develop a relationship with someone who can't breathe the same air? I was like, well, this makes long distance relationships look like a walk in the park, right? So they begin to unravel, and they have no words. So what do? They start from the beginning. They build this vocabulary. They begin to tell each other things that mean signing, all the ways we would if we were like in Italy or France trying to understand the language. The only difference is we'd have some familiarity. There's no familiarity here. And so I began to look at it, and I'm like, this is the intersectionality of life. Like, this is where we make it or break it. This is when two lives collide, and you weren't planning on being there. This wasn't what you planned on having for breakfast today. This isn't who you planned on spending your life with. This is the intersectionality of life, where everything is just so messy, where things are happening that you can't foresee, can't predict. And I wrote down that the biggest problem, hold on, I have it here. I had to take notes, y'all. They're literally metaphorically in the whale, right? In the whale of the belly of the whale. Metaphorically, the darkness of uncertainty is the scariest thing. And in that darkness of uncertainty, everyone feels like a friend. Like, bro, you're alive. I'm alive. Like, in the darkness of this uncertainty, you are the light. You are the light, okay? And I began to think to myself, oh my goodness, without relationships, we die. We die, bro. We die. It is not going to be toxic rivers or microplastics or, those things are bad. Save the planet. I'm all for, global warming. But at the core of our survival is relationships. When people say, oh my goodness, like relationships are so hard. These people had no words. They literally worked what felt like months to accomplish 250 words. And the first thing he accomplished was, this teacher was finding a voice for this guy. So they kind of use electronics to find a voice. And what do we do in the classroom? We are promoting student voice. We are giving these children or these students or these high schoolers of teaching them to understand their voice, right? So he begins his voice, and the first thing he wants to say is, why would they send a teacher out in space? Well, if you ask me, because we used to doing something with nothing. We used to not having a budget. We're used to creating miracles. You know, we're used to bridging language gaps. We ESL. You have your science teachers, your ESL teachers. We're the full package, man. You don't get anywhere without a teacher. Like the teachers are it. They're the foundation. I was listening to a podcast about Miko Picchu. Y'all say it for me. That structure, that huge structure. And they were saying that the foundation is 60% of the building. Okay, 60% of that structure is built underground. That's why it has sustained earthquakes and weather things. Man, we are 60 feet deep teachers. Okay, we withstand a lot of things. So why would you not send a teacher out in space? Just saying. I mean, there'll be bagels. We're not going to talk about that. Anyway, so let's just recap some of the points. How do you build a relationship with someone who does not breathe your air? How do you save the world with 250 words? Let me just say, how many words a baby speaks by the time he's 3? How many words should a preschooler, let's say a preschooler, have? By the time your child is in preschool, they have 2,000 words, okay? Homeboy is going to save the planet with 250 words. Now, that doesn't mean anything to you right now, but that's a very nerdy moment for me. So I said to myself, without relationships, we die. But they work through every barrier, okay? They worked on communication. They worked on creating an environment that was safe. Like we talk about creating safe spaces. Homeboy was like in a bubble. And that's another amazing thing that I loved about this movie. They made a lot of references. If you watched the movie, you didn't catch it. Of course, the Rocky and Adrian thing, they find the planet, they name it Adrian, Rocky and Adrian. That was obvious. And I loved it. I loved that they're always making throwbacks to Generation X. Like it's all about us, in case y'all was wondering. And so I love that. I love that they made a reference to Superman in the glass. He takes the glass and he's flying, right? He makes a reference to that. But the alien being wraps himself in glass, and the human is in his astronaut thing. And eventually they're able to work together, even though they can't breathe the same air. When we're in the classroom and we feel like we're not breathing the same air, they're still away. They're still away. So I'm just referring to my notes. Machu Picchu, I wrote it down. So this movie, lo and behold, becomes very, like, it climaxes fast. They work together, everything's trial and error, everything's empirical data, they're just observing, and they figure out together why this planet is not being affected by this cellular thing. And they have to get closer to the planet. Here's the problem. As he's talking, and we talk by the water cooler while they're doing their water cooling, they're working together. They kind of have covered the topic of what happened to their crew. And this alien thing says, I watch them while they sleep, because at one point he falls asleep and the guy's like, no, you die, because he doesn't know the humans close their eyes to go to sleep. And so he's like, you die. And he's like, no. He's like, I'm sleeping. He's like, I watched my crew members sleep. And that becomes powerful later. I'll tell you why, right? But watch me while I'm asleep. Remember that. And so they figure out through a series of events, through communication issues, by bridging the gap, by becoming overwhelmed by being in each other's spaces, right? There's nowhere to go. It's a little tiny spaceship. And he's like, this guy can hear me anywhere I go. And so he has no personal space, and because he's learning, he's like, "What are you saying? What are you saying?" You know. So those parts are humorous and they're cute, but they discover that they have to go closer to the planet, but they're not in a ship that can withstand like the atmosphere. So it's very strategic. And so the guy says, "I'll build I'll build a string like a fisherman. I'll build this chain. We'll go down. We'll go down, and we'll they have to get this astrophage or whatever into the atmosphere and kind of pull out the good bacteria that they discover kills this thing and go save the world." So it's a huge climax. You know, it's that thing where the ship is falling apart. It's like the best scene of your life. He's walking now outside of the ship, and it's just chaos. It's chaos, and it's crazy, and things are flying, things are hitting you. We're gonna die. Good job, good try, we're gonna die. But they make it back to the ship. And on this ship, you know, there's been a conversation before, like, "Bro, it's only a one-way trip. I'm not gonna make it home." And the alien says, "Wait a minute. I have enough fuel to get you home, and it'll take me 3 more years to get home, but if I fill your tank, you can go home." And that gives Goslin life. He was like ready to die. "I'm brave, I'm gonna die." But when he discovers the opportunity that this guy is gonna risk his own safety and give him some of his fuel so he could make it back, you know, that just that goodwill is a name for it. We'll just say goodwill of human beings. And he discovers, he was like, "Well, what was all that?" He was like, "I was just talking. Nobody wants to die." You know, now this mission, if it goes well, everyone gets to go home. So the mission is crazy. The ship falls apart, and they're heading back home. Well, the movie's over, right? Credits up. We did a good job. Yay, we saved the planet. The movie's not over. In their separate ways, as they're going, this chemical that they've brought on board destabilizes, you know. And they do give us an answer why the crew died. It was some radioactive material. Goslin and this particular character, which is called Rocky, they were just far enough not to be in the radioactive and not get radiation poisoning. So blah, 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 spoiler. But anyway, they're on their way back home, and something goes awry. And Goslin is able to get his ship on track, but he realizes that his ship is built differently, and he's gonna die when this thing happens on his ship. So he has to think, do I go home, I have a free ticket home, or do I go back and save Rocky? You gotta do the movie, you gotta watch the movie. I'm not doing it justice, but I'm just telling you my tidbits. So he decides, if I go back, there's not gonna be enough fuel. But this man saved my life. Like, I'm going back for him, bro. I'm going back for him. So he uses these probes to get the information back to Earth, and he decides he's gonna sacrifice everything for his brother that been with him through thick and thin, and he's gonna go back. So, just to go through my notes. So, Grace, or Goslin, goes from not being able to fathom the idea of dying to being willing to die for him. They've had some real tender moments. He says, he put a puppet show on for my little brain and I enjoyed it. You know, they've had tender moments. They've been on this holodeck where they've experienced each other's world, and they've had good times. They're like bros now. They're like bros. You know, when guys get together, it's not better than that. They're like bros. So, you know, and I thought to myself, here we went from God chasing you. And I said, don't make God chase you, because he's going to put you in the belly of a whale. Here we go from them chasing Goslin and forcing him onto this plane to Goslin going back to his friend. And I'm like, bravery is fueled by love. Bravery is fueled by a love that transcends romantic love, transcends all love. And it's just that pure, unadulterated love for a life in a life, right? For your life, for my life, or just, I can't really describe it to you, but it's the thing that casts out all fear, right? Love casts out fear, you know? So in light of this talk, and I'm not doing a great job at it because, like I said, it was too much to unpack, he goes back and he saves his friend. Sorry. I'm not re-recording this. I have to tell you what happened. I skipped a big chunk. When they were going down to the planet that they were trying to get the bacteria, Gosling gets hit by some foreign object and he's knocked out. And the oxygen is low and he needs to press this oxygen button. This was the bonding moment of the century. And this little creature breaks out of his protective bubble, which is basically his astronaut suit, and he turns the oxygen on. He drags Gosling to safety, and he comes within 1 inch of his life, and Gosling is out. And when Gosling wakes up, he sees like this rock blood trail where the guy's barely made it back to his habitat, and he nurses him for months. For months he nurses him back to health, right? Getting the ship, well, what feels like to months in movie time. And when he finally comes to life, that's when they go separate ways, and that's when they end up having to come back. And if I'm messing up any part of this movie, we're gonna go live, we'll be able to fix it then. But people, the layers of this movie, the human heart is beautiful when it's filled with love. It's beautiful when it's filled with those things that we talk about, the fruit of the Spirit in our Bible time. Was, love is patient, love is kind. They were patient with each other when they didn't know how to breathe each other's air. They were patient with each other when they didn't have the language to communicate. And they built something that told me relationships are going to save the world. They're going to save the world. We're talking about having a relationship with God, relationship with our children, relationship with our friends and our family. Relationships are going to save the world. Now, I always come back to this because I've lived long enough that I've seen some relationships not work out, right? You talk about marriages and they get divorced and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean, like we said this a couple of weeks ago, that there's a villain. That doesn't mean there's a villain. You can still be a beautiful person. I can still be a beautiful person and we not be together. But we are solving problems. Even if we solve the problem of us not being together, right? There's even love in that. Like I always say, like, leave when you're on top. I love those movies when they're like, leave when you're on top, right? Don't wait for the curve. Leave while you're on top. And even in that, that's love, right? Because I get to preserve you as a person and the best parts I love about you. You get to preserve me and the best parts you love about me. And these relationships were all about that. And in the end, he doesn't make it back home. He goes to the planet, everyone survives, and he's kind of sending data back to Earth. And there is an opportunity to go back, and we leave on that note. We don't know what he's going to do. We can kind of guess. And he's kind of built into this relationship with people who he has no connection with in terms of DNA or species, not the same species. And I hate to tell you the end because I want you to see it. I won't tell you that part. I won't tell you the last little tiny bit. It's kind of corny, but I loved it. It fed all my feels, so I was glad about that. But I did, like I said, and communication doesn't have to be perfect. He gets stuck at one point in the movie where instead of thumbs up, he's doing thumbs down, right? For us, that's like no go. But he couldn't quite get our there's a word for it. Our idioms. Couldn't quite get our idioms, right? But even in that, Gosling just conceded and gave him the grace to know what he means, what it meant. I know what you mean, bro. I know what you mean. And we need to know what each other means. Sometimes we want to frustrate. Nothing frustrates me more than the person's like, you mean potatoes, not potatoes? Come on, guys. Keep the sarcasm to yourself. I mean, I hate to mention this because I love this teacher with my whole heart, and maybe she might not see this, and I really, really love her. But as I was trying to tell her about my movie experience, I shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna say it. She says to me, I'm not an adult child. Those are adult children things. I am an adult. I don't go to movies, I go to countries. And it did kind of break my heart, just a little tiny bit. It broke my heart enough to say it on here. But when we share, we bring our pearls before people, when we share the little tidbits of things that touch our hearts, that's relationship building. And sometimes I know some teachers thinking you're goofing off, this and that. My superpower is connecting with people. Like, I have all the degrees. I had an interview today. I really hope I get that job in the schools district, in my school district. So I'm not leaving I'm not leaving us. I'm staying with us. But that's my skill. My skill is connecting with people and loving people. So my heart was a little tiny bit broken, but I'm taping it back together. But relationships save the world. In the end, relationships save the world, not ego. We saw ego in Germany. We saw ego in Bosnia. We saw ego in Rwanda, where we're power hungry. Having all the money, having all the treasures does not save the world. Having it's not a race of who dies with the most things. I don't know. I can't do a good enough job. I cannot. I try to take my notes, but in the end, I'm like, you are the solution. You're my solution, and I'm your solution. Don't make God chase you. Don't make God chase you. And that was funny. That was comedy. So I'm not sure I did a good job with this. But there was one scene in the movie where it was just a cinematography miracle. You saw the lights. It was just a beautiful time. It showed you how Gosling saw these, like, we'll say northern light type of things, and how this alien saw them. They were both seeing beautiful things, separate things, and the alien says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm just taking it all in." I want to remember in my life to take it all in. To take in my grandkids, to take in my co-workers, which for the most part I love with my whole heart. To take it all in. I really walked away feeling warm and fuzzy about this movie. This is a very long video because I don't know how to do this shorter. I couldn't do this shorter. I hope you enjoyed it. We are going to have a live talk. I mean, scientifically, it was mind-boggling. I learned what a cosmonaut is. A cosmonaut is a Russian astronaut. They're called cosmonauts, because they were astronauts from all over the world. I learned the idea of Einstein's relativity and time travel and how it gets kind of slippery. I learned and those things I knew, some of those things I knew, but there was a lot of vocabulary that was rich that I could see a good science teacher taking apart. So I don't know. I hope I did a good job. I hope this wasn't disappointing. I rambled, but this was amazing, and I just want to take it all in. I'm going to see it again. If you're local, you want me to go see it with you, I'll go see it with you. I'll do that. But that's all I got, folks. That's all I got. Without relationships, we die. That's what I took. And you don't need a lot. 250 words. We can't breathe the same air. He was as committed to him as he was to the other guy. The commitment was strong. Sacrifices were made. And the world was saved. Doesn't get better than that. So, well, I'm going to say goodnight because I'm going into 40 minutes, and that's long by anyone's standards. But have a wonderful night. I hope this was a good talk. I'll see you soon. Bye now.